Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story.
I don't usually get nervous before meeting someone, but that night something felt weird before I even left my house. The app guy seemed normal enough online. He had a few pictures at the gym, one with his dog, a couple of group shots with friends. The usual, nothing screaming danger. We messaged for like a week, and he was funny enough, not pushy, and seemed genuinely into meeting me. He suggested this cheap Italian place on the edge of town. Kind of low-key, not crowded like the usual spots. I figured, alright, safe enough. Walking there, I had that heavy feeling in my stomach. Not butterflies, just this dull pressure like I was driving something invisible along with me. I shook it off. Everyone gets a little anxious before first dates, right? So I get to the restaurant, and he's already there, which surprised me because most people are late. He waves me over, big grin on his face. Then I notice there's another guy at the table, not just another guy, his twin. Same jawline, same haircut, same exact eyes. One sitting all casual with a smile, the other just staring straight at me. No blinking, no smile, nothing. I thought maybe they were just friends who looked alike until the first one laughs and says something about how I should feel lucky. I freeze because I don't really know how to react. I sit down slowly, and the staring doesn't stop. The twin doesn't even move his hands from the table, just sits with his fingers pressed together like some kind of judge. My brain's racing like, why the hell would someone bring their twin brother to a date? And why is he not even saying anything? The date does all the talking. He orders for me before I can even open the menu, rattling off spaghetti and wine like he knows best. I'm forcing smiles, nodding, trying not to stare too hard at the other one. But I keep catching his eyes, and every single time, it feels like he's dissecting me without opening his mouth. The restaurant's not busy, just a couple in the corner and an old man at the bar. Nobody seems to notice what's happening at our table. It feels like the whole place is closing in on just us three. My fork feels heavy in my hand when the food arrives. I can't even eat properly because the twin's gaze never drops. He doesn't drink his water, doesn't touch the bread, nothing. He just watches me chew like I'm some kind of science project. The date keeps cracking jokes, bragging about his workouts, throwing in little lines about how women always appreciate when guys are up front. But every other sentence includes we, like not just him. We like Italian food. We go running every morning. We don't waste time. It's subtle, but it's there and it's making me sweat. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about them as if they're one package deal. At one point, he leans closer, and I can smell the cologne thick on his shirt. He says something like how I should appreciate being given this kind of attention, because not many girls get to sit across from both of them. The way he phrases it makes my stomach twist. I am supposed to be honored. I glance around, wondering if anyone else sees how off this is, but no one's looking. The waitress comes over once to ask if we're good, and the twin finally moves. Turns his head slowly toward her until she backs away without waiting for an answer. That's when it hits me that this guy isn't just quiet. He's deliberate. Everything about him is a choice. My appetite's gone. I'm pushing noodles around my plate, pretending to listen while my heart thuds against my ribs. The date notices and laughs, saying I must be nervous. He likes that. Says it shows I care. My throat dries up instantly. I start planning an escape. Maybe pretend to get a phone call, maybe fake being sick. But the twin must read my face because he finally tilts his head at me, slow and deliberate like he knows exactly what I'm thinking. It freezes me in place. I've never felt so pinned down without anyone touching me. Minutes crawl by. I'm trapped between conversation and silence, both of them feeding off each other in this disgusting routine. One talking, one watching. The longer I sit there, the more it feels rehearsed, like they've done this before. Finally, I blurt something about needing the bathroom and stand up way too fast. My chair screeches across the floor, turning heads. I walk toward the back, but instead of stopping at the bathroom, I slip out the side door that leads to the parking lot. The cold air smacks me in the face, and I don't look back. I just walk as fast as I can toward the main road, heart racing, eyes darting at every shadow. My hands are shaking so bad, I almost drop my phone. I grab it to order a rideshare. As I wait by the curb, I look back once. The restaurant's dim windows glow behind me. For a split second, I see two identical figures standing at the glass, side by side. One smiling, one blank, both staring at me. The car pulls up, and I practically dive inside. I don't read right until I'm halfway home, checking the rearview mirror like a maniac. I block him the second I get in my house. Deleted the app that night too. My phone felt dirty just having his messages on it, and I couldn't shake the image of them standing there, like it didn't matter which one of them was supposed to be my date. The whole thing started like any other bad decision. I matched with her on this app late at night when I was bored. Her photos weren't anything crazy, just a couple of bathroom selfies and one of her with a drink in hand. She looked normal enough, had a quick sense of humor in messages, and she actually replied fast instead of ghosting like most people, so I figured, alright, let's meet up. She suggested a bar downtown. Not the fancy rooftop kind, just this grimy spot with sticky floors, dim lights, and music too loud for the cheap speakers they had. The kind of place where people argue over pool tables and the bartenders look half asleep. I didn't really care though, I just wanted to get out of the house. She showed up late, wearing ripped jeans and this oversized hoodie, hair tied up like she hadn't even tried. She walked in with that attitude, like she already owned the room, even though everyone else barely looked up. I thought maybe she was just confident. At first, things weren't bad. We sat in a corner booth. She ordered shots like it was a Tuesday morning coffee, and she downed them without flinching. I sipped mine slow, just watching her laugh at her own stories. She had this manic energy that I couldn't figure out if I liked or not. About half an hour in, some guy at the bar looked over at us. He wasn't even doing much, just glanced in our direction, maybe too long. She caught it instantly. Her smile dropped, and she muttered under her breath before slamming her empty glass down on the table. Next thing I know, she's standing up, stomping toward him like he owed her money. The whole bar seemed to quiet just enough for me to hear her snapping at him. I couldn't make out all the words, but it was sharp, angry, escalating quick. The guy tried to wave her off, but she stepped closer, chest out, yelling like they'd been enemies forever. I slid out of the booth, thinking I'd have to drag her back when it happened. She grabbed a glass from the bar, raised it above her head, and smashed it against the edge. The sound cracked through the whole room. Shards scattered, people gasped, and before anyone could react, she swung at him. It didn't hit his face, but it slashed the air close enough that he stumbled backward into a stool. And then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not embarrassed. A full-on cackle like she'd just pulled the best prank in the world. She tossed a broken stem on the floor and clapped her hands once, smiling wide like nothing just happened. Everyone else froze. The bartender shouted something, a couple people backed away, and the guy she went at was pale, staring at her like she was insane. I couldn't even move. My brain was trying to catch up with what I just saw. She turned around, spotted me, and walked back like she'd just finished a casual bathroom break. Slid into the booth, leaned back, and grinned. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she acted like nothing was wrong. She grabbed my drink and sipped it, wiping her mouth with her sleeve. I didn't know what to do. Leave? Call someone? Pretend like this wasn't the biggest red flag I'd ever seen. She kept talking, bouncing from topic to topic, as if she hadn't just turned into a complete maniac 2 minutes earlier. Security finally came over. 2 guys in black shirts, one of them holding a radio. They asked her to step outside. She just shrugged, stood up, and walked out like she was going to smoke a cigarette. No protest, no scene. Just calm, almost smug. I sat there for a second, trying to decide if I should follow or just disappear. Curiosity won over common sense, so I walked out after her. She was leaning against the wall, still grinning, talking to the bouncer like they were old friends. The guy she swung at never came outside, probably still in shock. When she saw me, she waved like it was all a game. Told me to relax, that she was fine, that people were too sensitive. The bouncer looked exhausted, muttered something about keeping her under control, then walked back inside. She slipped her arm through mine, dragging me down the street, still laughing under her breath. The walk felt endless. I couldn't shake the image of the glass shattering in her hand, the way she swung it without hesitation. She didn't even care what could have happened. Didn't care about the guy, the people around, me. Nothing. It was just entertainment to her. She pulled me into another bar down the street like nothing had happened at the first one. Ordered another round, leaned back, and started talking about her childhood like this was a therapy session. Her eyes were wild, darting around the room, but she smiled through every word. I couldn't even finish my drink. I mumbled something about needing to leave, tossed a few bills on the table, and walked out before she could argue. My phone buzzed the whole ride home. Messages from her, paragraphs about how fun the night was, how I shouldn't be scared, how I should be impressed she could handle herself. I blocked her before I even got inside my house. Deleted the app the next morning. But I can't stop thinking about that sound, the glass breaking clean, sharp, echoing through the room, and the way she laughed right after, like it was the highlight of her week. It's always the nights when you think nothing serious is going to happen that end up burning into your brain forever. I wasn't even that into him from the start. We matched on some random Tuesday, headed for a couple days, and he seemed fine. Normal job, normal photos, liked movies and traveling. Nothing that screamed danger. He asked if I wanted to grab drinks, and instead of the usual bar meetup, he suggested his place. Said he had a balcony and good whiskey. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I got there, it wasn't sketchy at first. The apartment was clean in that bachelor way, like he wiped down surfaces but didn't really live in the space. Candles burning, music low, 2 glasses on the counter already. I figured fine. 1 drink, some small talk, and I'd bounce. We sat on the couch, and it was casual enough at first. He poured me a drink, asked about my week, told me about some project he was working on. Nothing heavy. I laughed once or twice, mostly out of politeness. The whiskey was strong, and I could feel it hit quick since I hadn't eaten much. That was my first mistake. Time dragged. The more he talked, the more I noticed how little space I had. He kept leaning closer, his knee pressing against mine, his hand brushing too often. I wasn't comfortable, but I didn't want to start drama in a stranger's apartment. So I made up my mind to finish the glass, make an excuse, and leave. I set my drink down and grabbed my bag. Told him I should head out. He smiled, nodded like it was fine, then casually walked to the door ahead of me. That's when I noticed it. A thick deadbolt at the top, locked with a key. He pulled the key from his pocket, tangled it, then slipped it into his jeans. He leaned against the door, arms crossed, blocking the way out. He told me we should talk things through before I left. My stomach dropped. I wasn't even sure what there was to talk about. I hadn't fought with him, hadn't argued, nothing. But suddenly, I wasn't a guest anymore. I was a trapped animal. I laughed it off, trying to play cool, hoping it was some awkward attempt at flirting. He didn't laugh back. He just stared, waiting for me to sit back down. I glanced around the apartment. The windows were sealed tight, 3rd floor up. Balcony door locked. My bag felt heavy on my shoulder, but useless. He kept standing there like it was the most normal thing in the world to deadbolt someone inside. Minutes stretched. He started pacing, saying how people always leave too soon, how no one wants to listen anymore. His voice wasn't angry, but steady, controlled. That was worse. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't drunk. He knew exactly what he was doing. I tried to keep my voice calm, asking him to open the door, telling him I was tired. He waved me off like it was nothing. Every time I inched toward him, he shifted to block me. The key never left his pocket. I sat back on the couch because I didn't know what else to do. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like the walls could hear it. He kept talking, his ex, about how people betrayed him, loyalty. Words spilling out like a rant he'd been holding in forever. I nodded, pretending to listen, every muscle in me focused on not panicking. I started planning dumb little moves in my head. Could I grab the empty glass and smash it? Could I fake being sick and run to the bathroom? Every idea felt like it would set him off worse. So I sat there, smiling at the right moments, hoping he'd get bored. Time crawled. The clock on the wall ticked louder than the music. The air smelled stale from the candles burning too long. My throat was dry, but I didn't dare ask for water. He walked back and forth, circling, always glancing at me like he was checking if I'd try something. Finally, after what felt like forever, he sighed and pulled the key out. He dangled it again, slow, watching my face. Said something about how maybe he could trust me after all. Then he unlocked the bolt, left the key in the door, and stepped aside. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, muttered something that sounded like thanks, and walked out without looking back. My legs felt numb in the hallway, but I forced them to move until I was out of the building, down the street, out into the night air. I didn't even call a rideshare. I walked fast until I hit a busier road, then ordered one there. My phone buzzed with his messages before I even got home. Paragraphs about how he was misunderstood, how he hoped I wasn't judging him, how he thought we had a connection. I blocked him the second I stepped through my front door, sat down on my bed, staring at my hands still shaking. The locked deadbolt kept flashing in my head, that sound of the key turning the way he refused to hand it over. It wasn't some misunderstanding. He wanted me stuck there.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I wasn't even planning to go out that night. I had one of those long days where you just want to crawl into bed and scroll aimlessly. But she kept messaging me on the app, firing off texts like she already knew me. She wasn't giving me much space to stall, and part of me thought, why not? So I said yes. Dinner at a decent restaurant, nothing too fancy, nothing sketchy. She showed up before me, already sitting at the table, red dressed, hair done up, and this big grin that felt a little too rehearsed. I figured maybe she was just nervous. First dates are awkward, right? The first 20 minutes weren't bad. She talked a lot, barely giving me room to get a word in, but at least it kept the conversation from dying. She asked about my job, my family, favorite foods, rapid fire. Every time I answered, her eyes locked onto me like she was memorizing every word. I chalked it up to her being really into it. But the mood started shifting little by little. She leaned closer than she needed to, touched my hand more than once even though I hadn't encouraged it, and kept saying how crazy it was we finally met, like we'd been building up to this for months instead of a couple of days. Her wine glass emptied quicker than mine, and by the time the food came she was already flushed. Halfway through the meal, I noticed she was watching the couple at the next table instead of focusing on me. Her eyes narrowed like she recognized them. I kept eating, trying not to stare, when she suddenly turned back to me and asked if I'd ever cheated. The question came out of nowhere. I laughed nervously, gave her some vague answer, and tried to move on. But she didn't. She went quiet like the gears in her head were spinning fast. Then, out of nowhere, she stood up. Chairs scraping loud against the floor, silverware clinking. Heads turned instantly. She pointed at me with this dramatic flair, her voice rising above the low hum of the restaurant. She shouted that I was cheating on her. Cheating on her. We had met in person for the first time less than an hour ago, and she was announcing to a packed room that I was unfaithful. People froze mid-bite. Waiters stopped moving. Every eye in the place shifted to me. My brain blanked. I couldn't even process what she was doing. She kept going loud and theatrical, like she was performing for an audience. Telling the entire restaurant that I was a liar, that I had been stringing her along, that I had probably brought other women here before her. The couple she'd been glaring at looked horrified, and the guy even shook his head like he'd never seen her in his life. I felt heat creeping up my neck, not from guilt, but from pure humiliation. Everyone stared at me like I was some villain. My fork was frozen halfway to my mouth, and all I could do was sit there like an idiot while she built this story out of thin air. The staff tried stepping in, but she waved them off, her voice rising even louder, accusing me of being a two-timer, saying I didn't respect women, saying she had proof. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, scrolling fast like she was about to show them something. My chest tightened. I had no idea what she could possibly pull up. But she didn't show them messages. She just held the phone up, blank screen glowing, ranting about texts that didn't exist. People muttered, whispering, shaking their heads. A few customers glared at me like I was dirt. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I tried to speak, tried to explain, but she cut me off with a fresh wave of accusations. Tears welled in her eyes and her voice cracked, but it was all theater. You could tell by the way she'd glance around the room, making sure everyone was watching. It wasn't about me. It was about her being the center of the scene. After what felt like forever, a manager came over and asked her to leave. She clutched her phone to her chest, gave one last dramatic sniff, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the glass rattled. Silence followed. The restaurant was dead quiet except for the faint clink of plates. I sat frozen, unable to move, every eye still on me. The manager muttered something about being sorry. The damage was done. No apology could erase the fact that 50 strangers had just watched a woman brand me as a cheater. I pushed my plate away, left some cash on the table, and walked out with my head down. The night air felt thick, heavy. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it until I got halfway down the block. It was her. Dozens of messages already flooding in. Paragraphs about how she knew what I was doing, how I couldn't hide it, how she had caught me. Screenshots of random numbers she claimed were mine. Photos of strangers she swore were girls I was seeing. None of it made sense. None of it was real. I blocked her right there on the street, deleted the app as soon as I got home, and tossed my phone across the bed like it was contaminated. But even then, I couldn't shake the sound of her voice echoing that restaurant, the way everyone's eyes burned into me like I'd been exposed. And the worst part wasn't the embarrassment. It was the realization that she believed it. She believed every word she said, even though we'd just met. I should have just ordered my own ride home. That's the thought that stuck with me the whole day after. The date hadn't even been that great. We met at a diner, had coffee and fries, and the conversation was so-so. He was one of those guys who talked over me half the time, but then acted like he was hanging on every word I said. I didn't hate it enough to storm out, but I definitely wasn't planning on seeing him again. When it was time to leave, I pulled out my phone to call a car, but he jumped in quick, offering to drive me. Said it was no trouble, that he lived near my area anyway. I hesitated for half a second but figured fine, save the fare, just get home quicker. The car was clean, smelled like pine air freshener, some sports radio playing low. At first it felt normal. Streetlights passing through the windows, the quiet hum of the engine, him asking if I liked the food. I gave short answers, already mentally checked out. But then we passed the turn that would have led back to the main road. I knew the area well enough to notice. I asked why he didn't take it, and he smiled without looking at me. Said he wanted to show me something special. My stomach dropped. I asked what he meant, but he just kept driving. The streets thinned out, houses giving way to stretches of trees. Streetlights became rare, the road darker, quieter. I glanced at my phone, thought about texting someone, but his eyes kept flicking to me in the rearview mirror, like he was waiting to see if I'd panic. I tried to keep my voice calm, telling him I was tired, that I just wanted to get home. He brushed it off like I was joking. My chest felt tight. I watched the GPS dot on my phone drift further away from my house. He turned onto a back road lined with woods on both sides. No houses, no businesses, just endless trees and patches of fog. The headlights cut a narrow tunnel through it all, and I realized if anything happened out here, no one would hear me. I thought about unlocking the door and jumping, but the car was going too fast. Asphalt blurred under the tires. My hand hovered near the handle, my brain screaming at me to do something, but my body frozen stiff. He slowed down near a dirt path and turned in. A car bumped over rocks, branches scraping the sides. The woods swallowed us whole. I kept asking where we were going, my voice cracking, but he ignored me. His grip on the wheel tightened, his jaw set. He was focused, determined, like this had been planned. The car finally stopped in a clearing. Just trees all around, thick and silent. He turned the engine off, and the sudden quiet made my ears ring. The dashboard glow faded, leaving us in the dim light of the headlights reflecting off trunks and branches. He leaned back, sighing like he'd just arrived at some vacation spot. My pulse was hammering. I gripped my phone under the table of my bag, thumb hovering over the emergency dial, praying for bars out here. Minutes stretched. He started talking about how people don't appreciate nature anymore, how he comes out here to clear his head. His voice was calm, too calm, like he didn't realize how wrong everything felt. I nodded weakly, eyes darting between the trees and the road behind us. I knew I had one shot if I wanted to get out. I waited until he looked down at his cup holder, distracted for half a second. I threw the door open and bolted. The ground was uneven, branches cracking under my shoes, the cold air slicing into my lungs. I didn't even care where I was going. I just needed distance. Behind me, I heard his door slam, his footsteps pounding after me. He called out, voice sharp now, echoing through the woods. Branches whipped my arms, roots nearly tripped me, but adrenaline kept me moving. I saw a faint glow between the trees, another road, headlights of some passing car. I pushed toward it like my life depended on it. I burst out of the trees just as a pickup truck slowed down, probably confused by me stumbling out of the woods like a maniac. I waked frantically, screaming for help. The driver hit the brakes, eyes wide. Behind me, he stopped at the tree line, watching, chest heaving. He didn't step out, just stood there, half in shadow, glaring. For a second, our eyes locked, and I felt cold all over. Then he turned back, disappearing into the dark. The truck driver yelled at me to get in, and I didn't hesitate. He drove me straight into town, asking questions I could barely answer, my brain still scrambled. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally got home, I locked every door, double-checked every window, sat in silence with my heart pounding in my ears. I deleted the app the next morning. No second guessing, no hesitation. But even now, whenever I'm in a car at night and the driver misses a turn, my chest tightens. I can't stop thinking about how easily he veered off course, how quickly I went from passenger to prisoner, and how if I hadn't run, I might never have come back. When I matched with her, she seemed normal enough. Quick replies, a little sarcastic, into movies and coffee. Her photos were casual, a bookstore selfie, a latte with foam art, a blurry concert shot. Nothing that screamed trouble, just someone normal, maybe even a little boring. Safe. She suggested we meet at a cafe downtown. A public place, good lighting, casual vibe. I was relieved, honestly. After too many sketchy late-night bar first meets, a coffee shop felt like a return to sanity. I got there early, ordered a drink, and waited outside, scrolling my phone, watching strangers pass by. Then she arrived. I recognized her right away. Same wavy hair, same half smirk I'd seen in her profile. She was dressed simply, jeans, jacket, messenger bag slung over her shoulder. But she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a man, not holding her hand, not trailing behind, right beside her. Same pace, same stride, a little too close for just a friend, not close enough to be her boyfriend. I assumed maybe it was her brother tagging along until he could wave and disappear. Except he didn't. She reached me, smiled, and introduced herself with a quick handshake. Then, like it was nothing, she gestured to the man. "This is Ben," she said. "He's here to observe." I laughed, assuming it was a joke, but she didn't laugh. Neither did he. Ben just nodded once, tight and formal, and pulled out a little black notebook. "Observe what?" I asked, still smiling, still hoping for the punchline. "Just you," she said, already moving toward the door. "Don't worry, he's not intrusive." I froze, then followed, because what else was I supposed to do? The three of us sat down at a small table by the window. She ordered a latte. I got black coffee, then ordered nothing. He sat across from me, directly in my line of sight, notebook open, pen poised. I tried to laugh again, nervously. "So, he's really just gonna sit there." She tilted her head like it asked something strange. "Of course. He's here to give me feedback. He's very thorough." The words sank into me slowly like cold water dripping down my spine. I looked at him. He was maybe mid-30s, clean-shaven, plain clothes. Nothing remarkable except the way he watched me. Eyes steady. No expression. Every time I spoke, his pen scratched against the page. I tried to ignore him, focusing on her. She smiled easily, told me about her job, her favorite coffee shops. Normal date talk. But every time I replied about my work, my hobbies, there it was, pen on paper. I couldn't stop glancing at it. At first, I thought maybe he was just there for her safety, some weird version of bringing backup. I could respect that. But no, she clarified halfway through, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. "He's not just here for protection," she whispered. "He's evaluating you. Don't let it make you nervous." Nervous? My chest was already tight. My palms damp. This wasn't a date. It was an audition. I tried to test the waters, ask Ben about himself, but he didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. Just scribbled more notes. She laughed lightly, touching her straw. "He doesn't talk during evaluations." Evaluations. The word lodged in my head like a splinter. The cafe bustled around us. People ordering drinks, laptops glowing, steam hissing from the espresso machine. But it felt like silence at our table, a bubble of scrutiny. Every laugh from me sounded forced, too loud. Every sip of coffee felt clumsy. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. When I returned, my chair had moved. Closer to the table. Just a few inches, but not how I'd left it. I paused, staring. Ben watched me sit down. No expression. He clicked his pen once slowly and wrote something down. She didn't notice. She just kept talking. Oh, favorite childhood cartoons, out the smell of rain. Innocent topics delivered with an easy smile while he dissected my every word. I felt trapped in a strange experiment. Halfway through, she leaned in again, giggling. "You're doing so well. Most guys get flustered by him, but you're handling it." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Glad to hear it. Across from me, Ben underlined something in his notebook. 3 times, my skin crawled. That was it. I couldn't do it anymore. I pulled some bills from my wallet, set them on the table, and stood. My legs shook. My voice cracked when I said I had to leave. She pouted, tilted her head, reached for my sleeve. Already? We were having such a good time. Ben leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, eyes on me, like he already knew I was done. I muttered something about work in the morning and pushed through the door into the night air. The cool breeze hit my face, sharp and clean, and I gulped it down like I'd been drowning. The sound of the cafe door swinging shut behind me was the only relief I felt. By the time I got home, I had 6 messages from her. Paragraphs. She said she'd had fun, said I had potential. Then came the list. Bullet points. Literally bullet points. Summarizing my performance. My posture, too stiff. My laugh, a little forced. Eye contact, decent. Phone checks, too frequent. She called it my first round review. I read it once, then twice, numb. My chest ached with something that wasn't quite anger, wasn't quite fear, just disbelief. I didn't reply. I blocked her number, deleted the app, and sat in the dim light of my living room staring at the wall. It wasn't just a humiliation of being watched. It wasn't even the way Ben stared at me like prey, like a lab rat in a maze. It was her smile, her casual tone, the way she acted like this was normal, like every day she went on had to pass through her observer's filter. I couldn't shake the thought. Somewhere out there, she's still doing it, matching with men, inviting them out for coffee, and sitting them across from Ben's unblinking eyes, his pen scratching, scratching, scratching. And right now, as I sit here, someone else is probably sitting at that table, trying not to choke on their words, trying to pretend it's fine, trying not to notice the way Ben adjusts the chair when they're gone. The weirdest thing about the night was how normal it started. He looked like his pictures, he was on time, he smiled when he saw me, and the restaurant was busy enough that I felt comfortable. No red flags at first. I actually thought, finally, a date that wasn't going to end up being a disaster. We sat down, ordered drinks, made the usual small talk. Jobs, hobbies, traffic. He laughed at my jokes, I laughed at his. The waitress came around, and everything felt almost too smooth. I was halfway through my drink when the tone shifted. He leaned forward and started telling me how much he liked my style. Not in a normal way, though. He mentioned a jacket I wore last winter in a photo I didn't even remember posting. Then he mentioned how the color of my nails tonight looked good compared to that bright green you had in July. My stomach tightened. I'd never told him that. I'd never mentioned it. The only way he would know is if he had scrolled months back on my Instagram. I brushed it off at first, pretending to laugh, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then he kept going. He talked about how my dog looked older in pictures from 2 years ago compared to now. He talked about the exact cafe I went to with my cousin last spring, even naming the drink I was holding in the photo. He mentioned how I'd cut my hair short the summer before and then let it grow out again. Every single detail landed harder than the last. My throat went dry and I just nodded while he casually recited my life back to me like a script. He didn't even sound embarrassed. He sounded proud, like memorizing my feed was some kind of accomplishment. His eyes lit up every time he dropped another detail. He described a vacation photo with so much accuracy I felt my stomach twist because that post barely had any likes. It was buried, forgotten, but not by him. The way he listed things wasn't just casual scrolling. He had studied it. He remembered dates, outfits, captions, even low comments I'd written. He laughed about how I always posted sunsets, how I had a thing for taking mirror selfies in hotel rooms, how my friends tagged me in birthday posts at the same diner 3 years in a row. It didn't feel flattering. It felt invasive. My chest was tight, like there was no air left in the restaurant. I forced myself to keep smiling, but inside my brain was screaming. I noticed the way people at nearby tables were laughing, eating, living normal lives. None of them knew the guy across from me was basically dissecting my entire online existence. My fork felt heavy in my hand, and I could barely swallow a bite of food. Then he started mentioning my family. My little brother's baseball game, my mom's garden photos, my dad's car in the driveway. All things I posted years ago without thinking twice. He remembered them like they were his own memories. The scariest part was when he leaned in and described a photo I'd archived months ago, something I didn't even want online anymore. He quoted the caption word for word. My heart dropped into my stomach. I couldn't even think straight. He kept smiling, sipping his drink, Talking like this was the most romantic thing he could do, prove he knew me inside and out. I felt trapped at the table, pinned by the weight of his words. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get a breath of air. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, my hand shaking so hard I had to grip the sink. I thought about slipping out the back, but my bag was still on the chair. My phone was in there too. When I came back, he was scrolling his phone, grinning. He said something about how I just liked a post from one of my friends an hour ago and how funny it was that he noticed. That's when I realized he had my notifications on. He wasn't just memorizing old stuff. He was watching me in real time. I sat back down, heart racing, trying to come up with an exit plan. I forced a smile, said something about being tired, and flagged the waitress for the check. He insisted on paying, which made me feel even more trapped. When we left, he walked me toward the door, close enough that I could feel his shoulder brushing mine. He mentioned how my houseplants were probably thirsty because I hadn't posted them in a while. I froze because I never told him where I lived. The fact that he even thought about my plants made my skin crawl. I muttered something, weighed down a ride chair, and practically dove into the back seat when it pulled up. He stood on the curb, waving like it was the sweetest day ever. I couldn't breathe until the car turned the corner. When I got home, I locked every door and went straight to my Instagram. I set it to private, deleted half my posts, and blocked him. But it didn't feel like enough. The way he recited my life back to me, the way he smiled while doing it, it was burned into my brain. It wasn't just a bad day. It felt like he already lived in my world without me knowing it, and all it took was me saying yes to dinner for him to let me know. I swear the night started off completely normal. We matched a few days earlier, and she was quick with replies, playful with her sarcasm, and easy on the eyes. She had that effortless confidence vibe. Profile photos in chic cafes, rooftop bars, a selfie in the back seat of a rideshare with city lights streaking behind her. Nothing that screamed red flags. Just someone polished, maybe a little high maintenance, but normal enough. She picked the restaurant. Said it was one of her favorites. That sounded fine to me. A favorite spot usually means she knows the menu, the staff, the energy. Comfort zone. I figured she'd be relaxed and maybe even guide the night. What I didn't realize until I walked in was that it wasn't just a restaurant. It was one of those upscale places, dim lighting, white tablecloths, menus that gleamed like laminated jewelry boxes, servers in black vests and polished shoes who looked like they'd been trained at a Broadway conservatory. Every gesture precise, every smile rehearsed. She was already there, sitting at a two-top in the corner, waving me over with a smile so wide it almost felt rehearsed. She'd gone all out, red lipstick, hair curled, nails manicured to perfection. The dress wasn't over the top, but it was the kind that said, "This isn't casual, this is an event." I slid into my chair, suddenly aware that I'd worn my decent button down, but not my best. From the moment we ordered, it felt off. She didn't even glance at the prices. Her eyes skimmed the menu like she'd memorized it years ago, rattling off appetizers, entrees, drinks. No hesitation. She even ordered 2 desserts just to try both. Every time the waiter left the table, she smirked at me across the candlelight. Not playful smirks. Calculated, like she was waiting for me to flinch to break character. I tried to keep pace. Ordered 1 entree, 1 drink. Smiled through the appetizers while she breezed through 2 glasses of wine before I'd even finished my first. The food was good. I could tell from the bites I managed between the knot tightening in my stomach, but I couldn't enjoy it. With every wave of her hand for another refill, another plate, another fork clinking down, I could see the bill climbing in invisible numbers above her head. She talked a lot. About trips she wanted to take, Paris, Tokyo, Dubai. About clothes she wanted to buy, designer names I couldn't pronounce. About how she was done wasting time on cheap guys. She said it casually, sipping her wine, her eyes glinting in the low light, like she wasn't saying it to me, but also very much saying it to me. I laughed nervously, nodded when appropriate, but inside my brain was screaming. By the time dessert plates were cleared, I already knew the damage was going to sting. My palms were damp against my jeans as the waiter slid the bill onto the table with that polite, knowing smile. I unfolded it under the table, eyes scanning the total. My throat closed. Massive. Way more than any first date should ever cost. I could feel the number like a weight pressing into my chest. I pulled out my wallet, trying to stay composed. Then she leaned across the table, eyes widening in mock horror. She patted her bag, checked her coat pockets, then sighed dramatically. She forgot her wallet. She said it lightly like she misplaced a pen. But when she leaned back, folding her arms, staring at me expectantly, it didn't feel light. It didn't feel accidental at all. I froze. My fingers tightened on my wallet. She tapped her nails on the table, one by one, steady as a metronome. The silence stretched until I mumbled something weak about how big the bill was. Her smile dropped. Just like that, it was gone. Her lips pressed into a line, her head tilted, and her eyes narrowed in a way that made my stomach twist. She leaned forward, voice sharp but low enough that only I could hear. "It's just dinner." A real man wouldn't hesitate. The words cut, not loud but precise, enough to slice right through the noise of clinking glasses and low conversations around us. I stammered, tried to explain that it wasn't about the money, it was just. She waved me off, rolling her eyes. She snapped her fingers at the waiter like he was a dog. The bill slid closer across the table. She pushed it toward me, the leather folder gliding like a threat. The air in the room felt heavy. People around us were laughing, drinking, oblivious. Meanwhile, I was frozen, my hesitation exposed under her stare. I hovered, my hand above my card. That brief hesitation was all she needed. She slammed her hands on the table, stood up, and her voice rang out sharp enough to cut through the entire restaurant. "I can't believe how cheap you are." Heads turned, every single one. The clatter of forks paused, conversations dropped. I could feel the heat rush into my face, spreading across my ears and neck. She grabbed her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and stormed out, heels cracking against the floor, each step like a gunshot. She didn't glance back once. And then she was gone. I sat there, the bill in front of me, 50 strangers staring like I'd been caught doing something shameful. The waiter lingered a few feet away, polite but clearly uncomfortable. I slid my card into the folder with hands that shook. When he walked away, I just sat in silence, staring at the empty chair across from me. The receipt came back, I signed without looking at the number again, shoved it into my jacket pocket, and left. The night air hit me like a slap, cool and sharp. I walked fast, head down, until I was halfway down the block. That's when my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, but I did. A string of texts from her lit up the screen. Paragraphs about how I'd failed her test, how I wasted her time, how I should have been honored to buy her dinner. She wrote like she was a teacher grading an exam. She ended with a laughing emoji, like the whole night had just been a game to her. I blocked her number on the spot, shoved my phone deep into my pocket, and kept walking until I hit a busier street, letting the noise of traffic drown out the echo of her voice. When I finally got home, I dropped my keys on the counter and sat in the dark. The receipt was still folded in my jacket pocket, heavier than it had any right to be. I didn't take it out, didn't look at the number. I didn't need to. What stuck with me wasn't the money. It was the way she looked at me right before she left. That cold calculation in her eyes, like she'd done this before. Like I wasn't the first guy to sit there frozen, wallet in hand, while she walked away smirking, leaving the wreckage behind. And the worst part, I knew I wouldn't be the last. The date wasn't supposed to end at his place. That was never the plan. We met at a diner, one of those chrome and neon spots that smelled faintly of grease and coffee. It was late, quiet enough that the booths felt private. I already decided that after dinner I'd call it a night. I was polite. He seemed nice enough, but I wasn't in the mood for anything more. But then he mentioned how close he lived. How he had a better bottle of wine at home. How it would be just one more drink. He kept repeating it with that easy smile, casual but insistent. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe I didn't want to seem rude. Maybe I thought leaving after one drink wouldn't hurt. The apartment was small but tidy. Neutral colors, framed movie posters on the walls, a plant in the corner that actually looked alive. He pointed out details with pride, where he found the couch online, how he was surprised the plant hadn't died on him. He had the energy of someone excited to show off a new toy. I hovered awkwardly near the counter while he rummaged through the cabinets for glasses. Music played softly from a speaker, something upbeat, cheerful, almost too cheerful for how quiet the room was otherwise. He poured the wine, set out some snacks, and we sat at a tiny table shoved into the corner. At first it was fine. He asked about my family, about childhood memories, about places I traveled. I gave short answers. I wasn't planning to stay long. Then, midway through the conversation, he said he'd forgotten a fork for the snacks. He stood, walked to the kitchen, and pulled open a drawer. That's when everything shifted. It wasn't utensils inside, not a messy tangle of spoons and spatulas. The drawer was lined, perfect rows of knives, not kitchen knives either, hunting knives, folding blades, black handles, steel etched with patterns, serrated edges, laid out like a collection, each one slotted neatly in its place, glinting under the light. I froze. My body just stopped mid-sip, mid-thought. My brain scrambled for an explanation. He didn't flinch, didn't look embarrassed. He picked one up casually, turning it over in his hand like he was holding a souvenir. The light caught the blade and made it shine. They all have stories, he said almost cheerfully. Each one means something. My throat went dry. I forced a weak laugh, pretending it didn't bother me, but inside every alarm bell was going off. He set the knife back, slid the drawer nearly shut, then paused, almost teasing. He opened it again, just enough to make sure I could see. That one, he said, pointing to a black-handled blade, was from a trip. He moved to another, a serrated edge. That one was from a lesson learned. The words made my stomach twist. He didn't explain further, just spoke slowly, carefully, his eyes never quite meeting mine. I nodded, smiled too wide, clutched my wine glass tighter than I should have. He finally plucked out a regular fork, like that had been the point the whole time, and returned to the table. But the image of that drawer was burned into me. I couldn't eat after that. I pushed food around the plate, my ears full of the sound of my own pulse. Every word he said blurred, drowned out by the pounding in my head. My eyes kept darting toward the kitchen, waiting for him to open the drawer again. He noticed my silence and laughed. "You look nervous," he said, swirling his wine. "Most people don't appreciate collections." That word stuck with me. Collections, like they weren't just knives, like they were trophies. He leaned forward, his voice lowering, explaining how each one meant something. How he remembered the exact moment he got each one. How holding them brought it all back. His hands moved as he spoke, slicing the air, miming motions that made my stomach turn. I muttered something about needing to leave soon. He tilted his head, studied me for a moment too long, then smiled. "You can stay as long as you want," he said. The words weren't threatening on the surface, but my skin prickled. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls too close. The cheerful music felt wrong now, absurd against the weight pressing down on me. I drained the last of my wine, set the glass down carefully, and stood, slipping my bag over my shoulder. My thank you sounded shaky in my own ears. He watched me, his eyes flicking toward the drawer before settling back on me. He didn't move to block me, he didn't open it again. But the unspoken weight had hung heavy in the room like a shadow. I walked toward the door, every step deliberate, like moving too fast might trigger something. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. He stood finally, strolling over with a casualness that made my stomach clench. For a split second, I thought he'd block my way, but he just leaned against the wall, smiling. "Next time," he said, voice soft, "I'll show you more." I forced a laugh and nodded too quickly, and slipped out the door. The hallway outside was oxygen. I didn't realize how tight my chest had been until I could breathe again. My hands trembled as I walked, as if the whole building was watching me escape. At home, I locked the door behind me, dropped my bag, and sat on the couch, my heart still pounding. My phone buzzed. A string of messages from him lit up the screen. "Thanks for coming over. Glad you got to see my world. Can't wait for next time." That phrase, "my world," made my stomach churn. I blocked him, deleted the app, sat in silence, staring at the wall. But my mind kept replaying the image of that drawer. Perfect rows of knives, each one with a story behind it. And I couldn't stop wondering what kind of stories they really were. I wasn't expecting her to come back to my place that night. That was never the plan. We'd only been talking for a couple of weeks. Nothing heavy, nothing serious. Just a few witty exchanges on the app, a handful of jokes about bad profiles and weird bios. We finally met for a drink at a low-lit bar near my office. The conversation wasn't bad. She had a dry sense of humor, a habit of leaning in when she talked, her hair falling into her face. I figured we'd wrap it up after an hour and go our separate ways. When she asked if she could see my apartment, I hesitated. I'm not the type to bring someone home on a whim, but she said it so casually, almost like an afterthought. I'd love to see your place. It was still early, and she smiled like it was nothing. Against my better judgment, I said yes. My apartment isn't much. A small living room with a couch I bought secondhand, a kitchen tucked off to the side, mismatched furniture I collected over the years. It's lived in, not impressive. I expected her to glance around politely, maybe compliment a framed poster, sit down with her drink. Instead, she walked in like she'd been there before. Her eyes roamed, scanning every corner. She trailed her fingers along the edges of shelves, opened the cabinet in the kitchen without asking, peeked inside, closed it slowly. I tried to laugh it off. Some people are just nosy, and I told myself, she's curious. It's fine. I poured 2 drinks and set them on the counter, but she didn't sit, she wandered. She asked me oddly specific questions. How many people had been over, how often I left town, who had a spare key. Her tone was light teasing, but something about it made a knot form in my chest. I smiled, gave vague answers, tried to steer the conversation back to normal topics. My hands itched to pick up my phone, to give myself something to do. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed her standing by the entryway table where I keep my keys. They're always in the same little dish: my car key, my work fob, my apartment key. She lingered there, tracing her finger along the rim of the bowl like she was drawing circles. Her expression was faintly amused, like she'd stumbled onto something interesting. I looked away for a second, pouring more wine into her glass. When I glanced back, her hand wasn't empty anymore. She slid something into her purse with a smoothness that made my stomach lurch. For a moment, I doubted what I'd seen. Maybe she just adjusted something in her bag. Maybe I imagined it. But then she zipped it closed, looked up, and smiled at me, a small, deliberate grin that didn't fit the situation. My mouth went dry. I asked her directly, my voice even but tight, "Did you just take my key?" She didn't flinch, didn't deny it. She sat down on the couch, crossed one leg over the other, and smiled wider. "Now I can visit any time," she said calmly. The air went dead still. My pulse thudded in my ears. I tried to laugh, but it came out cracked hollow. "You're joking, right?" She didn't laugh. She sipped her drink, eyes steady on mine, as if daring me to do something. My apartment suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. She was sitting there with my key in her bag, smiling like she owned the place. I walked closer, hand out, trying to keep my voice calm. "I need you to give that back." She tilted her head, studying me like a cat watching a trapped mouse. "You're overreacting," she said, breezy as ever. "It's just a key." She didn't move to return it. My heart pounded so hard it echoed in my chest. I could feel sweat prickling under my collar. She kept talking in that same light tone, asking if I cooked much, if I locked my windows at night, if my neighbors paid attention to who came and went. Her words were casual, but each one landed like a pinprick. I nodded weakly, trying not to show how rattled I was. But inside, my brain was spinning. I pictured her just showing up one night, letting herself in. I imagined coming home to find her sitting on my couch, waiting. Or sat on my sheets, my drawers rifled through, my things moved ever so slightly. "I need the key back," I said again, sharper this time. She leaned back, unbothered. Then she reached into her purse slowly, pulled out the key, and dangled it between 2 fingers. She didn't hand it over right away. She let it hang there, metal glinting in the soft light, her eyes locked on mine. Then she dropped it onto the coffee table with a small clink. Relief hit me for a half second before she smiled and said, almost in a whisper, "I don't need it anymore. I already memorized which one it was." My stomach dropped. We sat in silence. The cheerful music from the speaker played on, absurd against the tension pressing down on us. I wanted her gone, but I didn't know how to make it happen without things escalating. Finally she stood, slumped her bag over her shoulder, and thanked me for the drink. At the door she paused, turned back, and said softly, "See you soon." And she left. The second the door shut, I lunged for the lock, twisting every bolt until my fingers ached. I leaned against it, breathing hard, staring at the coffee table where the key lay. I picked it up, held it in my palm, and felt sick. It was the same piece of metal, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt tainted. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards made me sit up. Every sound from the hallway outside, it felt like footsteps coming closer. At one point, I dragged a chair in front of the door like that would help. When the sky started to lighten, I gave up on sleep. My head ached. My hands shook as I dialed my landlord. I need to change the locks, I said. Lost your key, he asked. Yeah, I said. The truth was worse. By noon, the locksmith had swapped the deadbolt. I turned the new key in the lock and felt a flicker of safety, but it wasn't enough, because somewhere out there she still knew exactly which door was mine. She had already pictured herself walking through it, and now so had I. It started normal, at least as normal as these things ever do. We matched on a dating app, swapped a few jokes, traded memes. Nothing deep, nothing serious. After a few days of back and forth, we agreed to meet at this burger place halfway between us. Neutral ground. Casual. I drove there alone, parked in the back, and didn't think twice about it. The sky was a flat gray, the kind of evening where the air smells like rain but never quite delivers. As I walked up to the entrance, I rehearsed the usual mental checklist. My friend had his name, the location, the time. I always text someone before and after a first date. I always keep my address private. Always. Inside, the place smelled like grease and charred meat, with the constant hiss of the grill underscoring a low hum of conversation. He was already there, sitting in a booth by the window, looking up from his phone. Tall, a little awkward, with an almost boyish smile. He stood to shake my hand, an old-fashioned gesture that was somehow endearing. The date itself wasn't terrible. He asked questions, laughed at my jokes, told a couple of awkward stories about work. We ate, split fries, shared glances over the table. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't a disaster either. Just a normal, forgettable first date. By the time the plates were cleared, I was already thinking about getting home, slipping into pajamas, and watching Netflix in bed. That's when the weirdness started. We walked outside, the cold air hitting my face. I was mentally composing my polite goodbye. Thanks, it was nice to meet you. When he said something that made me stop. He mentioned my neighborhood, not just vaguely. He named it. Out loud. My stomach clenched instantly. I knew I hadn't told him that. I'd never tell anyone where I lived this early, not you in the general area. My profile didn't list it either. My social media is locked down. I felt my heart thud once hard. I asked him, trying to sound casual, how he knew. He didn't even blink. He just shrugged and said he'd seen my car when I pulled up. Caught my license plate. Ran it. He called it a precaution. He said it like it was thoughtful, like he'd done me a favor. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard him. The cars in the lot, the chatter of people leaving the restaurant. It all seemed too loud. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thin. You what? He repeated it slower, proud of himself. I ran your plate, just to make sure. My whole body went cold. I tried to laugh it off, hoping maybe he'd realize how insane that sounded, but he doubled down. He went on about how people can't be too careful these days, how he needed to check before taking things further. His tone wasn't apologetic, it was matter of fact, like he was explaining how he chose what shoes to wear. I stood there on the sidewalk, hugging my jacket to my chest, forcing a smile. Inside, my heart was racing so fast it felt like a trapped bird. He had looked up where I lived before the night was even over, without asking, without permission, and he thought that was okay. I mumbled something about it being late, not needing to get up early. My voice felt too bright, too high. He nodded, still smiling, like we were sharing an inside joke. He even added a comment about how my street must be quiet at night because he'd been through there once. That line hit me harder than anything else. I forced a laugh, backing away. Yeah, it's quiet, I said. My keys dove into my palm as I fumbled for them. I rushed to my car, feeling his eyes on me. The parking lot suddenly felt like a stage, and I was moving too slowly. I unlocked the door with shaking hands, waved weakly, and slid in, locking it immediately. My breath came fast, white puffs against the windshield. I drove off trying not to peel out, but my fingers clutched the steering wheel so tight they ached. Every turn of the road felt wrong, like someone was behind me even though the mirror was empty. My chest was tight, my throat raw. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I didn't get out right away. I sat there in the dark, engines still running, staring at the houses around me. The street lamps threw pale pools of light across the pavement, and every shadow looked like a person. All I could think about was how he already knew this street. He had said it so casually, like he had every right. I shut off the engine but stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Eventually, I forced myself inside, locking the door behind me, checking it twice. I barely slept that night. Every noise outside made me check the blinds. The hum of my refrigerator sounded like footsteps. I pictured him driving slowly down my block, memorizing the layout, seeing which window was mine. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was him. He texted that he'd had fun and that he liked knowing where I lived now. He added a winking emoji. The words made me sick. The next morning, I told a friend, half joking like I didn't want to admit how freaked out I was. She didn't laugh. She told me to block him, delete the app, maybe even call someone about it. I did the first two right away, but I didn't call. What would I even say? That a guy admitted to running my plate. That he already knew my neighborhood. The thought of explaining it to a stranger felt exhausting, and part of me worried they'd say nothing could be done anyway. Days went by and I tried to shake it off. But every time I left for work, I caught myself scanning the street, making sure no unfamiliar car was parked nearby. Every time a notification popped up, my chest tightened until I saw it wasn't him. I realized the scariest part wasn't that he did it. It was how normal he made it sound. Like it wasn't creepy. Like it was smart. Like I should be grateful. And the way he smiled when he said it, that slow, self-satisfied smile, felt less like a quirk and more like a warning. That one date left me feeling like my privacy was gone. My house, my street, the car in my driveway, it all felt exposed, vulnerable. And the truth is, he probably still has that information written down somewhere. My name, my address, my plate, neatly stored like I'm just another entry on a list. I keep telling myself he's moved on, that he's forgotten, that I'm just a blip to him. But sometimes when the night is quiet and a car slows outside my house, I'm not so sure. I should have seen the signs before we even left the coffee shop. She was jittery, her eyes darting around, making little comments about people walking by. At first, I thought it was just nerves. First dates can be awkward. She smiled at me, asked about my job, and laughed a little too loud at my lame jokes. I didn't think too hard about it. After we finished, she suggested walking downtown. It was a nice night, streetlights glowing, crowds buzzing, restaurants spilling music into the sidewalks. I figured it'd be harmless, safer than going somewhere private. I said sure. We strolled side by side, weeding through people, talking about random things. For a few minutes, it felt almost normal. She told me about her favorite food, asked what movies I liked, pointed at storefronts with a spark in her eyes. I started thinking maybe this wasn't going to be a disaster after all. Then it happened. We passed by a woman about our age walking in the opposite direction. She barely glanced at us, honestly, probably at nothing in particular. But my date snapped. It was instant. 1 second she was mid-sentence. The next her head whipped around, her face twisted, and she exploded. Her voice rose above the hum of the street, sharp and violent. She screamed at the woman, accusing her of staring at me, of trying to steal me, of disrespecting her. The stranger froze, eyes wide, caught off guard. People around us stopped walking, heads turning. I felt my stomach sink, my face burning with embarrassment. My date stepped toward the woman, fists clenched, shouting threats like she was ready to fight right there in the middle of downtown. Her whole body shook with rage, spit flying as she yelled. The other one tried to walk away, but my date lunged forward, screaming louder, calling her names, daring her to turn around. I grabbed her arm instinctively, trying to pull her back, but she jerked away violently, eyes blazing at me like I betrayed her too. The crowd thickened. People pulled out their phones, recording. A guy from a nearby bar stepped outside, asking if everything was okay, but that just fueled her more. She shouted that everyone was against her, that no one respected her, that the whole world wanted to humiliate her. My chest tightened. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the sidewalk and vanish. The stranger was already gone, lost in the crowd, but my date kept screaming after her, voice echoing down the street. People stared, some laughing, some frowning, some whispering. I felt every single eye on me. I tried to calm her down, but she turned on me next. Her finger jabbed into my chest as she accused me of looking at other women, of inviting the attention, of embarrassing her on purpose. Her words were venomous, spewed with so much fury that I actually took a step back. Her face was red, twisted, veins standing out in her neck. She was shaking so hard her purse nearly slipped off her shoulder. For a terrifying moment, I thought she might swing at me. My heart pounded in my throat, sweat dripping down my back. The crowd started to lose interest. People drifting away, but a few stuck around, whispering, phones still out. The noise of the city returned, but I was locked in this horrible bubble with her rage. Finally, she took a deep breath, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and just stopped. She smoothed her hair down, adjusted her bag, and looked at me with a calm smile like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just threatened to be of a stranger in front of 100 people. I couldn't even process it. My brain was scrambled. She linked her arm with mine and started walking again, humming under her breath, as if we were on some cute little romantic stroll. My body felt stiff, my feet dragging, but she tugged me along. Every step felt wrong. My chest was still tight, my hands clammy. I couldn't shake the image of her face twisted with rage, the spit flying, the veins bulging, her voice cracking through the night air. The switch between fury and calm was too much. I muttered something about needing to go home. She pouted, asked why, said the night was still young. Her tone was sweet now, almost childlike, but her eyes had that same sharp glint. I couldn't bring myself to argue. I just repeated that I needed to leave. She sighed dramatically, rolled her eyes, then said fine. She let go of my arm and crossed the street without looking back. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath, trying to ground myself in the noise of downtown. Cars honked, music thumped from bars. People laughed as they passed. All normal sounds, but I felt like I'd been dropped into a nightmare. When I finally got home, my phone buzzed nonstop. Dozens of messages from her, paragraphs flipping between apologies and rants. She said I was amazing, that she was sorry, then accused me again of encouraging other women to look at me. The mood swings were whiplash in text form. I blocked her before I'd even set my keys down. Sat on my bed staring at the wall, still hearing her screams in my head, still seeing her face twisted with rage. And the worst part, I knew she wasn't finished. Somewhere out there, she was still seething. The first red flag showed up before the food even came. We were sitting in this small booth at a Mexican place he picked out. It was the kind of restaurant that looked cozy from the outside, warm lights strung across the windows, painted murals on the walls, but inside it was cramped. Tables pushed close together, booths so tight you practically had to breathe in sync with the person next to you. At first, I thought the bump of his arm against mine was just a setup. Space was limited, accidents happen. His arm brushed mine once, then again. A polite smile slipped onto my face as I shifted an inch toward the wall, giving him more space. But the space didn't matter. Every time I adjusted, he adjusted too. His shoulder grazed mine. His knee nudged me under the table. His arm brushed my sleeve again. Over and over, like little jolts reminding me he was there. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. I forced a smile, leaned back, and even said lightly, I like my personal space, just so you know. He chuckled, said sure, and leaned away like he got it. For a second, I let myself relax. Not even 2 minutes later, his hand slipped against mine as he reached for his glass. My stomach tightened. I pulled my hand into my lap, nails digging into my palm. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look embarrassed. He just smiled. A knowing smile, like it was some inside joke only he understood. I gave him the benefit of the doubt again. Maybe nerves made me clumsy. But then his foot tapped mine under the table. His shoulder pressed into me when he leaned forward. His fingers brushed my arm when he pointed at the menu. Each time, my body stiffened. Each time, I pulled back. Each time, I told him clearly, stop. He didn't stop. The waiter finally arrived with our food, arms full of steaming plates that barely fit on the tiny table. I thought maybe now he'd focus on eating, that I'd get a break. But as soon as I picked up my fork, his elbow knocked against me. This time he didn't even pretend it was an accident. He grinned, eyes locked on mine, and something in that grin made my stomach churn. I asked him straight out, voice sharp, if he was doing it on purpose. He smirked, leaned closer, and said, I like pushing limits to see what people do. Just like that. No shame, no apology. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. He wasn't clumsy. He wasn't nervous. He was testing me, like a kid poking an animal in a cage to see how it reacts. My throat tightened. The food in front of me, once tempting, now looked unappetizing and heavy, like it would turn to stone in my stomach. I kept my eyes on my plate, pretending to eat. My fork scraped against the ceramic as my hand trembled. I thought about standing up and walking out right then, but part of me froze. The crowd pressed in on all sides, the music blared too loud, and the booth felt like a trap. To leave, I have to slide right past him. He kept eating like nothing was wrong, chatting about random topics, brushing against me between bites. Each touch felt deliberate, heavier than before, not casual, not playful. Each one said, "See, you can't stop me." I shifted all the way to the edge of the booth, my shoulder pressed hard into the painted plaster wall. He noticed and laughed under his breath. That laugh chilled me more than the touches. It was low, smug, like he was enjoying himself. The minutes dragged. My chest was tight, my palms clammy against the fork. My mind raced with escape routes. Stand up, walk out, don't look back. But my body sat frozen, coiled tight with fear. He leaned in again, shoulder pressing mine, firmly this time. His breath was warm on my ear as he whispered, "People reveal themselves when pushed." That line burned into me. I muttered something about needing the bathroom, my voice barely steady. I slid out of the booth fast, almost knocking over the chair behind me, and hurried through the crowded dining room. The bathroom door shut with a heavy click, and I finally breathed. My reflection in the mirror was pale, my pupils wide. My hands shook so hard I could barely pull my phone from my pocket. I texted my friend in frantic bursts. "Call me in 10 minutes. Pretend it's an emergency, please." I splashed cold water on my face, trying to slow my breathing. The idea of going back to the table made my stomach twist, but leaving without my bag and coat wasn't an option. When I returned, he was still there, calm as ever, chewing slowly. He smiled when he saw me, like nothing had happened. "You okay?" he asked, brushing his fingers across mine as I slid back into the booth. My skin crawled at the touch. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. The fake call. I put it to my ear, nodding, murmuring like I was listening. Then I looked at him, feigning regret, and said, "I've got to go." Something came up. His smile faltered just for a moment. Then it returned, wider, forced. He leaned back, stretched his arms, and brushed against me one last time. Slow, deliberate. Walking out of that restaurant felt like stepping out of a cage. The night air was damp and cool, hitting me so hard I almost shivered. My pulse hammered in my throat as I rushed down the street toward my car. I didn't look back. Later at home, I sat on my couch in the dark, shoes still on, coat still buttoned. My phone buzzed again and again on the table. His name lit up the screen, message after message. Paragraphs about how I was interesting, how I handled myself better than most, how I shouldn't be scared of a little boundary testing. Each line made my skin crawl. I blocked him, deleted the app, then sat in silence, staring at the wall. Even after, I could still feel it, the ghost of every accidental touch, still burning on my skin. A map of unwanted contact etched into me, each one a reminder that he knew exactly what he was doing. And worse, he enjoyed it. I didn't even want her to pick me up. I'd suggested we meet at the restaurant, keep it simple, low stakes. But she insisted, said it'd be easier if she drove, that she loved being behind the wheel, that her car was her baby. She even threw in a winky face emoji like it was supposed to reassure me. I hesitated, but eventually caved. Maybe it'd be nice not to deal with parking. When she pulled up outside my place, I should have known something was off. The bass from her speakers rattled the windows, a relentless thumping that made my chest vibrate before I even opened the door. The whole car shook with the music like it was alive, like it was straining against its bolts. She leaned across the passenger seat and shoved the door open, grinning at me from behind oversized sunglasses, even though the sky had already slipped into that dusky gray where headlights start coming on. I slid in fast, buckled up, and before I could even shut the door properly, she slammed her foot on the gas. The car lurched forward with a squeal of tires, hurling me back into the seat. My stomach dropped to the floor as we shot down the street like we were running from a crime scene. My hand clamped onto the door handle instinctively, knuckles whitening. She laughed, revving the engine like she was showing off. We hadn't even made it 2 blocks, and I already knew I was in trouble. Maybe, slow down. I tried forcing my voice to stay calm, casual. She just glanced at me, smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth, and pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed. 50. 60. 70. My chest tightened. The city lights streaked into long, blurred lines outside the window as she wove recklessly through traffic. Horns blared, tires screeched. My heart thudded against my ribs so hard it hurt. She didn't flinch. She just laughed louder, head tilted back for a second too long, like this was all a thrill ride. I gripped the seatbelt across my chest. Seriously, slow down. Her grin widened. Don't be so uptight. I like testing people, seeing how they handle pressure. Testing people. The words sank into me like ice. 90 miles per hour on a crowded city street. She swerved left, missing a truck by inches, then darted back into the right lane before an SUV could clip us. Every movement felt deliberate, like she was dancing on the edge of disaster just to watch me squirm. Jesus Christ, I muttered, voice strangled. She shot me a sideways look, her sunglasses reflecting the headlights. You're fun. Most guys start screaming by now. The fact that she sounded almost disappointed that I wasn't panicking loud enough chilled me more than the speed. The engine roared, the wind whipped through a cracked window, and the car smelled faintly of burnt rubber from the tires. My hands were slick with sweat against the dashboard, fingers digging into the plastic like I could hold the car still. My jaw ached from how hard I clenched it. Every red light we came to, she blew through without hesitation. I thought about unbuckling and bailing, but there was never a chance. No slowing down, no pauses, just unbroken momentum. At one point, she actually reached across me to crank the music up. Her arm brushed my chest, her body leaned into my space, and for those few seconds her hand was off the wheel. My breath caught in my throat. Sure we were going to spin out. She laughed again when she saw my face. Relax, she shouted over the pounding bass. You'll love it once you get used to me. Her words twisted my stomach into knots. The highway opened up in front of us, a long stretch of black asphalt glowing with white and red lights. I prayed she'd slow down, but instead she floored it harder. 95. The car vibrated beneath us, the wheel trembling faintly under her grip. She swerved between gaps that weren't really there, threading the car like a needle through traffic. I was trapped, strapped into a death machine piloted by someone who thought it was a game. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. My heart beat so fast I wondered if I'd pass out. My brain kept conjuring images of twisted metal, exploding airbags, broken glass slicing skin. I braced for impact with every lane change, my body jerking against the seatbelt as if it could somehow prepare. Finally, mercifully, the speed dropped. Not because of me, but because we hit traffic. Red taillights glared all around us, forcing her to ease off the gas. My entire body shook as the car slowed, adrenaline burning through my veins like acid. Only then did I realize how tight my fists were clenched. My nails had dug half-moon marks into my palms. My mouth was dry, tongue heavy like I'd swallowed sand. She turned to me, her smirk still in place. Ah, are you mad? I couldn't even speak at first. My throat was tight, my lips cracked. When words finally came, they were hoarse. Take me home. For the first time, her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then it snapped back into place wider than before. You're too serious, she teased. You need to loosen up. Live a little. I didn't answer. I just stared out at the brake lights, praying for an opening, planning how I'd escape the second we hit a side street or parking lot. The restaurant came into view at last, its neon sign glowing like a lifeline. She pulled into the lot fast, the tires crunching against gravel, then braked hard enough to jolt me forward in my seat. Before she could even put it in park, I unbuckled, nearly dropping my phone in my rush. My legs wobbled as I shoved the door open, but I didn't stop moving. She leaned across the seat again, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You passed the test. Those words froze my blood more than the entire drive had. I mumbled something about forgetting my wallet at home and walked, fast, faster than I thought my legs could move, across the lot. I didn't look back. Didn't give her the satisfaction. My phone slipped in my damp palm as I called a rideshare, my fingers trembling so bad I had to try twice. When the car finally pulled up, I yanked the door open, muttered at the driver to just go, and didn't breathe until the restaurant lights disappeared in the rearview mirror. But before I left, I glanced back once. She was still parked there, leaning over the wheel, her shoulders shaking with laughter. Not angry. Not hurt. Just amused, like the whole night had been nothing but a game she'd played before, and would play again. The date was already a little awkward before the whole phone thing happened. We met at a trendy bar downtown, the kind with dim amber lights and cocktails that come with sprigs of rosemary sticking out of the glass. He was already sitting when I arrived, posture straight, crisp shirt tucked neatly into his jeans. He looked polished in a way that made me instantly self-conscious about my casual sweater and boots. Still, first impressions can be misleading. He smiled, stood to greet me, shook my hand like we were at a job interview. I tried to laugh it off, settling into the tiny booth across from him. The first drink was fine. He asked about my job, I asked about his. We made small jokes about the music being too loud. The bartender cracked a one-liner that had us both laughing, and I thought, okay, maybe he's just stiff at first. People loosen up. By the second drink, though, the energy shifted. He leaned forward across the little table, his eyes boring into mine like he was about to confess something profound. Then, without warning, he said he wanted to try a trust exercise. The words hit me wrong immediately. Who says that on a second cocktail? My stomach nodded, but I forced a smile and asked what he meant. That's when he held out his hand, palm up, expectant. Give me your phone, he said. I blinked, waiting for the punchline. None came. His hand didn't waver. His eyes didn't move. He repeated it slower, like I was a child who needed instructions explained twice. Give. Me. Your phone. My chest tightened. I laughed nervously, glancing around the bar, but he didn't so much as crack a smile. His hand remained there, patient and still. I muttered that I wasn't comfortable with that. He smiled then, slow, smug, practiced. That's the point. Trust only matters if it makes you uncomfortable. The sentence made my skin prickle. The chatter of the bar suddenly felt distant, like I had slipped under water. It was just him, me, and his hand cutting the space between us. And against every screaming instinct, I slid my phone across the table. I can't explain why. Maybe because confrontation in a crowded bar felt impossible. Maybe because I froze. Maybe because some warped part of me thought he'd glance at the screen and hand it back. But he didn't. He pocketed it instantly like it belonged to him. A satisfied pat against his jacket. My heart sank to the floor. Now, he said, leaning back with that smirk carved into his face, you can have it back if you agree to a second date. My blood ran cold. I forced a laugh, hoping he'd crack and admit it was a joke. But he didn't laugh. He just stared at me, unblinking, the kind of stare that made my palms sweat. My fingers wrapped tight around the sweating glass in front of me. I asked again, evenly, to get back. He shook his head. Calm. Steady, like we had all the time in the world. Second date, he repeated. The bar shrank around me. The warm glow of the lights became suffocating. A reflection in the mirror behind the counter looked pale, cornered. My entire world narrowed down to that rectangle sitting inside his pocket. My ID, my money, my contacts, my entire life trapped in his possession. I thought about lunging across the table, yanking it from him. But the way he leaned back, relaxed, smiling, made me freeze. He wanted me rattled. He wanted me to show desperation. Seconds dragged. His smirk widened. Finally, I muttered that fine yes, I'd see him again. His eyes lit up with triumph, and only then did he reach into his pocket and set the phone back on the table, right in the center between us. Relief flooded me as my hand shot out and snatched it, shoving it deep into my bag like a lifeline. He acted like nothing had happened, smoothed his shirt, leaned in casually, and asked what kind of movies I liked. His voice was light, conversational, as if he hadn't just held me hostage. I nodded, barely processing his words, my body buzzing with leftover adrenaline. My drink sat untouched. My throat was too tight to swallow. Every time his hand twitched, I flinched, terrified he'd reach across and take it again. At one point, my phone buzzed in my bag, and my whole body jolted like I'd been shocked. He noticed, of course. He noticed everything. His smirk returned, softer this time, more private, like we'd just shared a secret. I sat there, smiling faintly, waiting for the earliest possible excuse to leave. The walls of the bar pressed in closer with every second. My mind spun, searching for a safe exit. Finally, I mumbled something about an early morning. He leaned back, stretched leisurely, and asked if he should lock in that second date. My mouth went dry. I nodded quickly, eager to get out. His smirk sharpened, satisfied. The second I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap. I fumbled my phone out of my bag, thumbs trembling as I called for a ride share. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the screen. As the car pulled up, I glanced through the bar window once. He was still there, leaning back in the booth, face glowing in the candlelight, eyes locked on me as I left. Smiling, always smiling. By the time I got home, 3 messages from him were already waiting, each one smugger than the last. Glad you agreed. I knew you'd come around. Can't wait for round 2. See, trust isn't so hard. I blocked him instantly. Deleted the app. Sat on my bed with my phone clutched to my chest like a stolen thing I had barely won back. But even then, I couldn't shake the memory of him sliding it into his pocket. So calm, so casual, like he owned it, like he owned me. Dessert was supposed to be the easy part. The part where you lean back, laugh about something dumb that happened during the main course, maybe order something to share if the mood is right. Dessert is the cool down lap of a date, the moment you figure out whether this is a see you again situation or a polite, have a nice life. That's what I expected. Instead, dessert was the moment everything turned sideways. The night hadn't been a disaster. Not amazing, but not bad either. We met on the app, swapped a week's worth of messages, and landed at a Mexican restaurant she recommended. She showed up on time, dressed sharp, with a smile that seemed to flicker just a little too wide. But she was charming enough. Dinner flowed, small talk about work, a couple of funny stories, the usual back and forth. If anything, she was just intense. Every time I said something, she leaned in close like my words were secrets meant only for her. When I cracked a joke, she laughed like I was the funniest guy alive, throwing her head back dramatically. I chalked it up to nerves or excitement. First dates are weird. But when dessert came, everything shifted. She ordered some chocolate thing, took one delicate bite, and then set her fork down. Her focus wasn't on the food. It was on me. Not casual attention, not flirtatious eye contact. She stared, unblinking, eyes locked like she was memorizing every movement of my face. I shifted in my seat, tried to make light of it with a joke, something dumb about staring contests, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she leaned forward, voice dropping low. "I have to be honest with you," she said. My first thought was, here it comes. The letdown. The "you're nice, but..." But the words that followed weren't rejection. They were worse. "I've been following you for months." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. At first on the app, she went on, but really, mostly on your socials. Her lips curved into a grin like it was some silly inside joke we shared. Multiple accounts. All fake. I didn't want you to know it was me. A cold wave rolled through me. I blinked, sure I misheard, but she wasn't joking. Her eyes glowed with pride, like she'd been waiting for this reveal. Then she started listing things. My gym routine. The place I grab coffee every morning. The bar my coworkers and I hit on Fridays. Even the exact hour I usually leave work. Each fact landed like a punch. My chest tightened. "Wait, how do you know that?" My voice cracked as I asked. She leaned back, smiling wider. "You tell the world, silly, stories, check-ins, photos. Same shirt on a Tuesday, again on a Thursday. I see the patterns. I figured out your schedule. You're actually really predictable." Her tone was light, playful, almost flirty. My throat went dry. Around us, plates clinked, waiters shouted orders, laughter swelled, but all of it was muffled under the pounding in my ears. She didn't stop. She sipped her drink slowly, eyes never leaving me, and instead it felt like she already knew me before tonight. That this date was just making it official. She laughed softly, almost tenderly, like confessing a crush. I forced my lips into what I hoped passed as a smile. Inside, my stomach twisted. My palms were slick against the glass I gripped too tightly. She kept talking about how romantic it was to piece together my life like a puzzle, about how she liked knowing everything up front because surprises ruin relationships. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her nails dug in slightly, grip firm, eyes shining with devotion that felt more like possession. I froze. The waitress appeared suddenly, asking how everything was. Relief shot through me. This was my chance. I could tell her something, signal for help, but my voice betrayed me. Nothing came out. My date smiled sweetly, told the waitress everything was wonderful, and squeezed my hand tighter. When the waitress left, her eyes snapped back to mine, her grin returning. I swallowed hard. My chest was tight. I mumbled something about needing air, sliding out of the booth before she could stop me. "Where are you going?" she pouted. "Just a second," I lied, forcing a smile. I walked fast through the restaurant, my legs trembling so badly I nearly clipped a chair. The second I hit the sidewalk, I yanked my phone out. Notifications lit up the screen, comments and likes from faceless accounts I'd ignored for months, names I didn't recognize, blank profile pictures. Suddenly, they weren't random anymore. They were hers. They'd always been hers. My hands shook as I ordered a rideshare. I stood under the harsh glow of a streetlight, scanning every face on the sidewalk, half convinced she'd follow me out. When the car finally pulled up, I dove in, muttering at the driver to just go. As we pulled away, I glanced back once. She was there, framed in the restaurant doorway, phone in hand, staring at me, not chasing, not calling out, just watching. When I got home, I locked the door, closed the blinds, and sat on my couch scrolling through my own history. Every photo, every caption, every location tag felt like a breadcrumb I'd left behind. My dumb, smiling face at a bar, a coffee cup on my desk, a check-in at the gym. All pieces of a map she'd been drawing in secret. I deleted everything at friends' e-posts, photos, entire accounts. But it felt pointless. She'd already absorbed it all, memorized it, built her little puzzle until she could recite my life better than I could. And the worst part wasn't what she said at dinner. It was what she didn't say. If she admitted that much with a grin, what else was she keeping quiet? What else had she already seen? What else was she playing? That night, I lay in bed in the dark, phone clutched to my chest like a weapon, blinds pulled tight. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every buzz on my phone made my heart leap. Because even if I deleted everything, even if I blocked her, somewhere out there she was still watching. And she already knew the whole script of my life. The first date wasn't even that bad. That's the part that messes with me. He wasn't charming, but he wasn't awful either. We met at a coffee shop one Saturday afternoon. He suggested we sit outside since the weather was nice, and we talked about random things, work, pets, favorite foods. He leaned in too close sometimes, stared a little too long without blinking, but nothing so outrageous that I couldn't brush it off. Just awkward. A little intense. Not my person. When we wrapped up, I told myself it could have been worse. Not a total disaster, but not someone I wanted to see again. The next morning, he messaged asking if I was free for date number 2. I typed out a polite response. "You're nice, but I don't feel a connection. Best of luck." I sent it, muted the chat, and went out my day without giving it another thought. People get rejected all the time. You move on. Or so I thought. That night, around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. I was already in bed, lights off, scrolling TikTok while the steady hum of traffic filtered through my window. I glanced at the screen, expecting some random notification, but when I saw his name, my stomach dropped. It was a photo. My apartment building's front door. The chipped green paint. The crooked number nailed above the frame. Even the tiny crack in the step I trip on every morning. A photo taken from the sidewalk, dead center, like he'd been standing right there. I sat up so fast my blanket tangled around me. My chest squeezed tight and my breath caught in my throat. My first thought was that maybe it was old, maybe pulled from somewhere online. But no, the lighting was the same as outside right then. Dark sky, faint yellow glow from the street lamp. It was fresh. My fingers shook as I stared at the screen. Then another message popped up. One word. Hi. The air in my room grew heavy, pressing against me. I slid off the bed and crept toward the window, pulling the blinds back just a sliver. My eyes darted up and down the street. Empty cars, darkened windows, the buzzing halo of the street lamp. Nothing. But nothing didn't mean he wasn't there. I snapped the blinds shut, locked the window, then double-checked the front door. I sat on the couch gripping my phone so hard my hand hurt. My mind raced. How did he know where I lived? I'd never told him, never mentioned the street, never posted it online. Had he followed me home? Waited outside a coffee shop and trailed me all the way back. Another buzz. And another. Each message made my stomach twist tighter. He said he didn't take rejection well. He said I owed him another chance after the great time we'd had. He said it wasn't smart to ignore him. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, but what was I supposed to say? Beg him to leave me alone. Argue. block him, and hope he didn't show up again. I sat frozen, every sound outside amplified, the rumble of a car, faint footsteps, the rustle of leaves in the wind. Each one made me flinch, imagining him standing out there, phone in hand, waiting for me to peek out the window. Another buzz. This time, a photo of the alley next to my building. The one with the overflowing trash bins where the streetlight flickered weakly, sometimes not working at all. My skin went cold. He wasn't just outside. He was moving around, exploring. I called my best friend with trembling hands, whispering as I explained, pacing in tight, frantic circles. She told me to call the police immediately, but my brain was foggy, jammed with panic. What would I even say? That a guy from an app was taking pictures of my building. No threats, no break-in. They'd probably shrug, tell me there was nothing illegal about standing on a sidewalk with a phone. Another buzz cut through my thoughts. A photo of the buzzer panel downstairs. My apartment number circled in red. My knees buckled and I dropped onto the couch. My breath came out shallow, ragged. My vision blurred at the edges. I bolted upright, threw the chain across the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat there staring at it like it might burst open any second. The messages kept coming for a while. Short lines about how unfair it was to reject someone without giving them a real chance. Demands that I come outside. Promises that he just wanted to talk. Every word was drenched in entitlement, like I belonged to him after one cup of coffee. And then suddenly silence. No more dings, no more photos. The buzzing stopped. I didn't dare move. I stayed up the entire night, eyes darting between the door and my phone, heart leaving at every creak of the old pipes or groan of the building. I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. The thought of sitting in darkness while he prowled outside was unbearable. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. I dozed off upright on the couch. Every muscle knotted, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. When I jerked awake, sunlight spilled through the blinds. I blinked at my phone with gritty eyes and trembling fingers. No new messages. Just the photos from the night before burned into the screen and into my mind. I blocked his number, deleted the app, told myself it was over. But it didn't feel over. Even now, every time I walk up those steps, every time the street lamp flickers overhead, I see that photo again. My door, glowing in the dark, framed through his camera. And every time I turn my key, I wonder if he's out there somewhere, watching from across the street, waiting. Because if he found me once, he'd find me again. And next time, maybe he won't just send pictures. I didn't plan on going back to her place. It was only our second time hanging out, and I figured we'd just grab a drink, talk, and call it a night. But after the bar closed, she insisted I come over. Said she lived nearby, said she wanted to show me her world. I should have trusted my gut and gone home, and I followed. Her apartment building was older, the kind with flickering hallway lights and carpets that had seen better decades. She walked ahead, humming, swinging her keys. I trailed behind, already second-guessing. The inside of her place was cluttered but lived in. Plants everywhere, stacks of magazines, a faint smell of candles mixed with dog hair. She told me to sit on the couch while she grabbed something from the back room. I sat down, scanning the photos on the wall, trying to piece together what kind of person she really was. That's when I heard the scratching. Low, steady, nails against wood. Then a deep growl that made the hair on my arm stand up. She came back smiling, holding a leash in one hand, but nothing was attached to it. She asked if I was ready for a real test. I tried to laugh it off, asking what she meant, but before I could finish, she unlatched a door down the hall. A massive dog barreled out, muscles rippling under its dark coat, teeth bared in a snarl. It charged straight into the room, stopping just a foot away from me, barking loud enough to rattle the windows. My body went rigid. I shot up from the couch, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to get out. She leaned casually against the wall, watching with a grin, saying she needed to know if I could handle protecting her before things got serious. The dog lunged closer, snapping its jaws inches from my leg. I stumbled back, hands raised, trying not to provoke it, but the growls grew louder. Spit flew from its mouth, its eyes locked on me like I was prey. I told her to call it off, my voice cracking, but she just tilted her head, amused. She said this was important, that she needed to see my reaction, that most guys failed. My chest tightened. Failed. What did that even mean? The dog circled me, muscles tense, its nails clicking against the floor. Every movement made me flinch. My palms were slick, my throat dry, but I forced myself to stand still, hoping it wouldn't see me as a threat. She clapped her hands suddenly, and the dog barked louder, lunging just short of my arm. My heart nearly exploded. I stumbled back against the wall, gasping, my legs ready to give out. She laughed, genuinely laughed, like this was the funniest show she'd ever seen. I begged her again to stop, my words tumbling over each other, but she only smiled wider. She said I wanted her trust, I had to earn it. That line made my stomach twist. The dog lunged again, teeth snapping so close I felt the air against my skin. I jerked sideways, crashing into a chair, sending it clattering to the ground. My chest heaved, my body trembling, and still she didn't move. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she whistled sharply. The dog froze, ears twitching, then backed away slowly, still growling low in its throat. She snapped her fingers and it trotted back to the hall, sitting obediently by the door like nothing had happened. She turned to me, smiling calmly, and asked why I looked so scared. My legs were shaking, my shirt damp with sweat, my heart still racing like I'd sprinted a mile. I couldn't even form words. She shrugged, grabbed a glass of water, and sat on the couch, acting like we'd just finished some normal game. She said she liked knowing a man's limits. That fear revealed character. Her voice was steady, almost soothing, but her words made my skin crawl. I mumbled that I had to leave, my voice barely working. She pouted, said I was overreacting, and told me to sit back down. My chest seized. I muttered again that I had to go, grabbed my jacket with trembling hands, and backed toward the door. She sighed, rolled her eyes, and told me the dog wouldn't hurt me if I didn't act weak. That word hit me hard, but I didn't stay long enough to argue. I yanked the door open, stepped into the hall, and nearly ran down the stairs 2 at a time. Out on the street, the cold air slapped my face, but it didn't calm me. My ears still rang with barking, my body still shaking. I walked fast, scanning every shadow, half expecting her to follow the dog at her side. When I got home, my phone buzzed. Messages from her, paragraphs about how proud she was that I stood my ground, how she thought we had potential, how next time would be easier. I blocked her number immediately, deleted the app, and sat in the dark, gripping my phone like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. But even now I still hear the bark when I close my eyes, and I still see her smiling while it lunged at me. I thought it was just coffee. That's what we agreed on. Simple, casual, middle of the afternoon. No pressure, no big expectations. He picked the cafe, said it was quiet and cozy. I didn't think much of it. Coffee dates are safe. You meet in public, you chat. You see if the vibe is there. Worst case, you drink a latte and leave. But the second I walked in, my stomach flipped. The cafe wasn't quiet at all. It was buzzing. Every table was packed, the air full of clinking cups and voices overlapping in a chaotic hum. Except one table. A long one in the corner. And it wasn't empty. He was there, sure, but he wasn't alone. 6, maybe 7 other people sat with him. A whole group. I froze near the door, clutching my bag, my brain stuttering as I tried to process it. He spotted me instantly, waved with both arms, and shouted my name across the cafe. Heads turned. His table, his people, looked up and smiled in unison. My throat went dry. I walked over slowly, each step heavier than the last. My eyes flicked around, searching for some other explanation. Maybe it wasn't his group. Maybe he just happened to sit near them. But no, the way they watched me, expectant, eager, there was no mistaking it. He grinned as I reached the table, gesturing proudly like he was unveiling a surprise. Everyone, this is her. Them. His mom, his dad, a sister, a brother-in-law, even a younger cousin filling with a phone, a full-on family lineup, all of them staring at me. I laughed weakly, some half-baked attempt at breaking the tension, but no one else laughed. His mother reached across the table, warm hands closing around mine. "We're so excited to meet his future wife," she said. The words hit me like a slap. My cheeks burned, my chest tightened, my eyes darted to him, waiting for a correction, a joke, something. but he just nodded proudly like she'd spoken the absolute truth. Future wife. Before I could even process that, the questions started. Rapid fire, one after another, no room to breathe. Where did I grow up? What did I do for work? Did I want kids? How many? Did I cook? What were my values? Each question landed sharp, leaving me scrambling for an answer while the whole table leaned in, eyes locked on me. My palms slicked against the chair. I wanted to stand to walk out, but the way they surrounded me made me feel pinned in place. Every time I glanced toward the door, his father spoke up, steering my attention back. His sister scribbled notes in a little book, nodding like she was keeping score. The cousin casually raised his phone and snapped a photo when he thought I wasn't looking. I leaned toward him, my voice low and shaky, and asked why his whole family was here. He smiled wider, squeezing my hand. I wanted them to meet the woman I'm serious about. My stomach lurched. Serious? We've met once before. For less than an hour. The weight of their stares pressed harder. His mother leaned closer, whispering conspiratorially that she'd already been looking at wedding venues just in case. His father asked about my parents, whether they were traditional. His sister asked how I felt about moving to their town long term. My pulse hammered in my ears. I forced a weak smile, muttering excuses, but the questions didn't stop. They piled higher, sharper, peeling me open layer by layer until I felt stripped raw. I tried to excuse myself for the bathroom, but his hand caught my wrist, firm, holding me in place for a beat too long. His smile never faltered, but his grip carried weight. Finally, he let go. I rushed to the bathroom, my legs shaky, my reflection pale in the mirror. My breath came in shallow bursts. I fumbled my phone out, texting a friend. Call me in 5 minutes. Emergency. My hands shook so badly I could barely type. When I returned, their eyes tracked me back to the sea. The interrogation resumed instantly. My health, my religion, my finances, my timeline for children. Each question was more invasive than the last. His sister's pen scratched furiously. His father's gaze was heavy, almost challenging. Then my phone buzzed. Salvation. I grabbed it, answered immediately, nodding as if listening. Oh no, I said, voice shaking but loud enough for the table to hear. I'll come right away. I slipped the phone into my bag and looked at them with wide, apologetic eyes. I'm so sorry. Something urgent came up. I have to go. His mother's smile faltered. His father exhaled through his nose. His sister frowned down at her notes. But he just smiled. Calm. Certain. They'll see you again soon, he said, like it was a promise. I stood on unsteady legs, muttered a thank you, and backed away. Their eyes followed me the entire time, unblinking, unreadable, until I pushed through the cafe door into the cold air. I walked fast down the street, scanning behind me, half expecting him, or worse, all of them, to follow. My phone buzzed again just as I turned the corner. A message from him. Thank you for being so good with my family. They love you already. When can we plan dinner at my parents' house? My stomach flipped. My vision blurred. I blocked his number immediately, deleted the app, and ducked into the nearest store, hiding among racks of clothes until my pulse slowed enough to breathe. Even then, the weight of their stares lingered. The scribble of his sister's pen, his mother's talk of wedding venues, his hand gripping my wrist. It wasn't a coffee date. It was an ambush. I thought it was just going to be dinner. Nothing heavy, nothing serious. We'd matched on the app only a few days earlier. A few quick exchanges, some light banter, and then she suggested grabbing Italian. I agreed. A casual meal, a chance to see if the spark was real. That's all it was supposed to be. I showed up nervous but hopeful, checking my reflection in the restaurant window before going in. She was already there, waving from a corner booth with an eager smile. At first, it wasn't bad. She was chatty, energetic, the kind of person who filled every silence before it even existed. She ordered appetizers before I'd even opened the menu, gestured for a bottle of wine without hesitation, and laughed loudly at every mild joke I made. She leaned in close, asked a million questions, some normal, some a little intense, but I figured maybe she was just nervous too. We clinked glasses. We traded stories about work, travel, childhood, pets. I felt myself relax. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was fine. Normal, safe. Halfway through the main course, everything changed. She went quiet, her gaze flicking around the restaurant like she was checking to make sure no one was listening. Her fingers brushed over the strap of her purse. Slowly, deliberately, she reached inside. I thought she was pulling out her phone or maybe lip balm, something ordinary. But when her hand came back, it was holding a tiny velvet box. My brain stalled. She set it on the table gently, almost reverently, her thumb stroking the lid like it was precious. Then she smiled. A wide, glowing smile that made my stomach knot. She flipped the box open. Inside was a silver ring gleaming under the dim light. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My throat tightened. "Try it on," she said. Her voice was steady. Serious, not playful, not joking. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to grin, to admit it was a prank, but her expression didn't change. Her eyes were locked on mine, her smile unwavering. "I'm ready to lock this down tonight," she said. The words made my blood run cold. I muttered something about how fast it was, but she shook her head, almost pitying, as if I didn't understand. She said she knew what she wanted, that she wasn't interested in wasting time like other women. Her tone was rehearsed sharp like she'd delivered this speech before. The ring sat between us like a live grenade. My hands trembled under the table. She pushed the box closer with one manicured finger, the metal catching the light as it slid across the wood. "Go on," she urged. "It's just symbolic. Doesn't mean marriage yet. Just commitment." Her eyes burned with determination. I tried to deflect, babbling about how nice the food was, asking if she came here often. But she leaned forward, her smile tightening into something rigid, almost strained. "Men always play games," she said, her voice low, clipped. "Not this time." The air felt heavier. The chatter and clinking around us faded, distant like I was underwater. Then she reached across suddenly and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, her nails pressing into my skin. She plucked the ring from the box and tried to slide it onto my finger. Panic surged through me. I yanked my hand back so fast I knocked over my water glass, sending it crashing across the table. Cold liquid spread everywhere. The box tipped but didn't fall, the ring gleaming even brighter against the wet wood. She flinched at the spill, her eyes widening for just a second before her expression reset. She laughed softly, a brittle, unnatural sound. "Nervous," she said, almost herself. "They always get nervous." She dabbed at the mess with napkins, humming under her breath, her smile plastered back in place. But I saw the flicker of something underneath, frustration, maybe even anger. I couldn't breathe. The restaurant felt smaller, the walls closing in, the ceiling dropping lower. I muttered something about needing the bathroom and stood before she could stop me. My legs wobbled as I pushed through the crowd and stumbled into the restroom. Gripping the sink, I stared at my reflection. My face was pale, eyes wide, sweat beading at my hairline. I fumbled for my phone, hands trembling. Quickly, I typed out a message to my friend. "Call me in 5 minutes. Emergency." My thumb hovered, slick with sweat, before hitting send. I stayed there for a minute, sucking in shaky breaths, then forced myself back out. She was waiting. The ring box was still open on the table. She sat perfectly straight, smiling brightly as though nothing at all had happened. When she saw me, she patted the seat beside her, motioning for me to return. My phone buzzed just as I sat. "Salvation." I answered instantly, nodding like I was listening. "Oh no," I said loudly. "I'll come right away." Her smile faltered and returned, smaller, tighter. "You're coming back, though?" she asked. Her voice was light, but her eyes were sharp. I shook my head quickly, muttered an apology, and grabbed my jacket. My chair screeched against the tile as I stood. Every nerve in my body screamed to get out. Her eyes followed me all the way to the door, unblinking, her fingers stroking the velvet box like she was soothing a living thing. The second the cool night air hit me, I broke into a fast walk. My heart pounded against my ribs, my legs shaky. The restaurant lights glowed behind me, warm and inviting to anyone else. But to me, it felt like escaping a cage. I turned the corner, finally letting myself exhale. My phone buzzed again. A message from her. It was a photo. The ring sitting in her palm, perfectly centered in the frame. Beneath it, the words, "It's still waiting for you."